Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Rogers Kakasungura YouTube channel. Yesterday, late evening, after the violently infiltrated Gen Z's demonstrations, the government of the Republic of Kenya, through the CS Interior, Professor Kithure Kindiki, announced through a press release that the government has identified the sponsors of vandalism, looting of property, and destruction of infrastructure. So according to Kindiki, he said they are privy to the information from the DCI, the names and the NGOs who sponsored anarchy in the Republic of Kenya. Now, my question I'm asking this evening, if Kindiki is true to his sentiments, why has he not arrested the people who sponsored the maandamano and they're just moving around arresting young people, the small fish, instead of facing the big fish? Are we being treated to propaganda? Of course, the government says we know the sponsors. So up to that point, why have they not arrested those sponsors and charged them? Because they know them. This is the question Raila Odinga is asking. The government knows the sponsors of these goons. Arrest them. Through a statement from the Raila Odinga Secretariat. This is what Raila Odinga is saying. What started as an expression of disaffection with the government by young Kenyans through peaceful protests and presentation of petitions to authorities degenerated into chaos and mayhem yesterday. People were clearly not the Gen Z that started the initial protests, hijacked it, looted business, attacked innocent Kenyans, and destroyed critical infrastructure. There are reports of innocent women being harassed and raped in some parts of the country. The scenes of people looting, vandalizing, and robbing were way different from what was witnessed at the start of the protests, when the Gen Zs were in complete control of the process and its programs. We have had occasion to condemn police brutality on peaceful protesters, and we continue to demand civility and accountability from security officers during the protests. On the same breath, we condemn the scenes we saw on television screens and which people witnessed and experienced in their neighborhoods across the country, in the hands of criminals posing as protesters. I extend deep sympathy to the families who've suffered in the hands of looters posing as Gen Z protesters. Innocent people who've seen their business premises broken into, their products looted, and who now face the reality of being worse off than before the protests. The young people who started the protests were out to correct the injustices in the country and in the process educate all of us that protests can be peaceful. civil, and still achieve the intended goals. For thugs to hijack the protests and turn them into mayhem against innocent Kenyans amounts to a double betrayal of the youth. The bad manners have to be stopped. Signed, the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, the 3rd of July, 2024. Ladies and gentlemen, it is crystal clear the government is saying, let's get the flow of information first so that we are able to get the culprits behind this. When Gen Zs came on the streets, the Kenyan government said the peaceful Gen Zs were sponsored by Gachagua, Uhuru Kenyatta, Raila Odinga, LGBTQ, and the USA. 5 people named. Right? Those are those peaceful Gen Zs who did demonstrations last week, who never vandalized property, they never destroyed critical infrastructure, they never touched cars, they were just peaceful. According to the government, those Gen Zs were sponsored by those people. LGBTQ, Raila Odinga, Gachagua, Uhuru Kenyatta, and the USA. We are in a second week of demos. Property get destroyed. Cars burnt. Property looted. People injured. And all sorts of criminal acts. The very same government that said the sponsors of Gen Zs now came again said the same sponsors sponsored criminals. Now, I was asking myself, for heaven's sake, even if it is selling propaganda, can the government find something that can be truthful? How can the same funders sponsor Gen Zs at the same time again sponsor criminals? It is crystal clear that all of us agree, and even the government agrees, that yesterday there were criminals who were not Gen Zs. The government agrees to that. The Gen Zs also agree there were criminals away from them. Political analysts like me and others also agree. The media also agrees that yes, there were criminals away from Gen Zs. Now, let's zero down. To try Gen Z, let's remain with the criminals. Gen Zs cannot sponsor criminals. They sponsor themselves. Who are the sponsors of these criminals? Of course, your guess is as good as mine. Ladies and gentlemen, you do not need rocket science to identify or to know the true sponsors of the yesterday's chaos. And if we proceed this way, because the very same government, as said before, I remember them telling Raila Odinga, we will hire goons to counter your demo. And they did it. So, it is their cultural acts to counter demos. It's their culture. So, when criminals infiltrated yesterday's demos, we have no rocket science to determine. We just use previous sentiments to implicate them. Because they have previously said we are able to counter peaceful demos with criminals. So, kama mnatafuta sponsor wa huyu, kawaida yupo na hamuhitaji sayansi yote kuambiwa. God bless you, ladies and gentlemen. See you in the next video. Asanteni sana.